Hey everybody, how's it going tonight? So this is going to be the third part of my four-part tutorial on how to bring metals into Lumion. In this tutorial, we're actually going to start to focus on the actual importing of the textures. So just in a quick recap, the first part of this tutorial, we focus on just kind of Lumion's indoor and outdoor library, where we just kind of look at things like the gloss slider, the reflectivity slider, and just the relief. Just little things like that, just so that everyone has a better basic understanding of how the metals work. And in the second tutorial, we went through and we talked about the specular map and also, the specular workflow and also the Metalness workflow, and how the two of them kind of are different while also being similar, and how Lumion uses a combination of both. So understanding what maps you have and how those are going to get brought into Lumion will really help when it comes down to making the actual textures. So I'm going to be showing you a few textures today. The first one is going to be the metal stainless steel brushed elongated 005. So these are free textures. I'm going to try and use as many free ones as I can. The last texture we're going to look at isn't, just because it's more of an example. But yeah, so what you would do is you would open this up, and typically you'd have your workflow and it says specular. But most people go like, okay, well, here's the gloss map. I need that. Let's just download it. So if you do download this, what you're going to get is a folder that looks like this. So actually, I think this might be a slightly different texture, but it's close enough that it doesn't matter. So anyways, what you're going to get for the color map is this. So it's just a black, material. So if you try to bring that into Lumion, no matter what you do, it's just going to be a black metal. It won't have any of the, the effect that you want. But what most people would then say is they go, oh, okay, well, that's no problem because we have the reflection map. Since if in a specular workflow, if the color map is completely black, that means that 100% of the color data is coming from the reflection map. So yeah, it's pretty, it makes sense. Someone would just go, okay, well then I'll just bring in the reflection map because it's basically the color map. And for these kind of materials, that does work. That's not a problem. So let's bring that into Lumion and see how that looks. So here we go. We'll choose the color map. I will make sure I'm in the right folder. Now, I've already gone through and I've added all the maps together in Photoshop. What I did is I just copied the reflection map and then I brought that in twice. So I basically took the reflection map, used it as a color map, but then put that first reflection map into the color map so that what we had is the reflectivity mask as well. So I'm just going to drop these target in. And if you're unsure about what I just said with dropping the masks in, I'm going to leave a link to the first tutorial that I made that goes through and shows you how to edit the alpha channel of the materials that you're going to bring in so that you can make masks in Lumion. Most people will kind of assume that you can only bring in the textures that are shown here, but you can bring in a couple extra. So if you want to find out about that, go to the end of the video and I'll have a link to it. But for now, I will link these target files. And yeah, so once I bring this in, we'll probably bring this gloss down a little bit because it's kind of high, but right about, maybe down a little bit more. So what we can see here is that this metal it's pretty reflective here. So as you just play around until you find something you like, but we are seeing that, it kind of has these scratches on it. If I turn this down, you might see it a bit better. So we can see a bit of these scratches on it. You're kind of seeing some of that brushed metal effect. And yeah, this, as I said, if you want to use the reflection map for this, there's no problem. When you have a simple metal like this, the difference between the metalness and the specular workflow don't really matter. But I am going to show you with this texture why the two workflows start to matter for Lumion. So as you can see in this one, we kind of have a similar material to the first one, except now there's some rust spots on it. So we have the kind of the gray aluminum metal, but then we also have the red and the brown from that rust. And yeah, so I'm going to pull up, let's just pretend I downloaded the specular map here, or the specular workflow. So if I come in here, yeah, specular. So this is what we're going to be looking at. So we have our gloss map. Okay, cool. That's what we needed for Lumion. And then this is our reflection map, and this is our color map. So as you can see, we're getting the rust on one side and then the white on the other. So let's see what happens if we bring that into Lumion. We want the specular for this one. Okay, so I'll make sure it's not target. So yeah, if we bring in this one, then the metal is working, or sorry, the rust is working. So we can see all those brown splotches. They look correct, but we don't want all this black metal. It just, even though it has the right reflectivity and everything, it's just not the effect that you want. So let's get rid of this one. And instead, we'll bring in the reflection map like we did. Except as we just saw, now you have the opposite problem. While this looks better, it's not really it's not really fixing the problem. If you wanted to go through and Photoshop these maps together, you kind of could. What I would just do is basically go in and magic wand the black area, and then delete it, and then all you're left with is you should be left with is the rust, and you can just put that on that. But there is an easier way of actually going about it, and it's in this one. So if we just go to the Metalness workflow, and yeah, then what we're gonna have is the diffuse map. So now if we click here, you want to make for some reason when you hit to click it to see it, it'll turn it off. But yeah, so this is what it's going to look like. So now we have the two maps combined, and you don't have to waste any time photoshopping them together, and it just saves you a pretty big headache. So let's bring this one into Lumion and see how that looks now. So I'm going to pop out of here. I'm going to go into my Metalness workflow. And I've already gone through, as I said, in Photoshop, and I've made the targa masks. So I'm going to use these just to get a bit more definition. And I think that should be good. So when we're looking at this, I think if we just hop into the camera mode here, we just kind of use the real skies for a second. Yeah, so if let me just find where the sun is here. So as you can see, when we're dragging the sun over it, we are getting some different, I guess, like light bounces off the metal as opposed to the rust. It's just that there isn't a lot of rust, so it's kind of hard to see that effect. Yeah, so the last texture I'm going to show you is just one with way more rust, so that we're going to be able to get kind of more of an idea there. But I did mention this in the first part, I believe, but I'm going to show this again. So it seems that when the gloss map is at, okay, so if it's at 0, that means that there's no gloss in the scene at all. Pretty, kind of explains itself. That's easy. If it's at 0, it's 0. But if you go to 1, as you can see, all the parts that were metal are now extremely reflective. But we can see that the rust isn't really metal. Or it's not really reflective, I mean. And if I drag this along here, if you kind of look at those rusty areas, they're not changing. So it's only the metal parts. But then if I get to 1 and go past that, the metal parts aren't changing. But as you can see, now the rust is the part that's changing. So that's just something to keep in mind, that if you see it where it's like, you get this effect where it just looks like there's almost like everything is reflective, just make sure that your gloss is at the right level. My recommendation for metals is between 0.8 and like 1. 1 would be very reflective, and 0.8 would probably be dull, or a very dull metal. I feel like once you kind of start going past that, you kind of get like it doesn't look like it's metal anymore. So yeah, I'd probably keep it around that threshold. So as I said, we will be looking at one more texture. Now this texture is not a free one, unfortunately, and it's from Substance, just because I couldn't find a really good example of what I wanted in Poliigon with the textures I already had, but I did have this one in Substance, so I decided to go ahead with it. I'm just going to close these down quickly. So if I pull up Photoshop, and I'm just going to get rid of these because that was from the prior example. So I will pull up the Substance player. Now this is the texture that I wanted to use. Maybe I can make this a little bit bigger, because if we kind of move it in the sun here, we can see there's a really big contrast between the rusted areas and the parts that are still kind of the metallic, and I think that that's going to be really cool, and we can bring that in. So first things first, I am going to go into my Substance rust. Now I just went and exported the JPEGs into this folder, no problem. Now what I want to do here is I'm going to make the masks, kind of on the stream. Typically I'll just go and make them before I do the video, so that it speeds things up. But this is kind of a trick that I want people to know for this one. And as you can see, typically we'd only need the base color, the normal, the specular, and the gloss. But I also have the metallic here, and that's going to kind of be the trick that I show you. Just for making really kind of like overpowered rust and really reflective metals in Lumion. So anyways, we will bring in the base color and we'll bring in the specular because we want to make the reflectivity mask. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to drop this into the alpha channel of the color map. So in this part, I just want to note that the rusty areas are really red, and then the metal is red, but it's much lighter. So if we save this target out, and we go to, right folder. So I'll call this one color reflect. We'll save that. We'll make sure it's at the 32 bits. I will close these down for now. And then I'll also bring in the normal map, and we're going to do the same thing with the glossiness map. And as I've said before, if you have a roughness map, you have to invert it. So just quickly, I'll do this. So this, as you can see, if I just hit Control I, you're inverting it. And this was the correct one, I believe. So I'm going to cut this. I'm going to put this back in the alpha channel. And yeah, again, with this one, we're getting, you can see kind of where the rust is, and we are getting sort of definition there. So I'm going to call this one normal gloss. We're going to save that. So let's bring our textures in and kind of see if that's going to give us the effect that we want. We'll do substance, and here's the color reflection map with the mask. So typically I'll just go and make sure that it's not clipping the object. If it's clipping, you can kind of see what happens. So the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in the gloss map now, or the normal with the gloss mask. Right. So, that kind of worked. It's not exactly how I want it to be, just because, with my gloss at 0.9, which is where it should be, the relief won't change it too much. Just kind of makes it grittier. So we can just kind of leave that on. But let's go into Real Skies and see if that is kind of giving us the effect we want. Now, this sort of is, like, we can definitely tell when the sun goes over that there's a difference between the rust and the metal. But there's actually a way to kind of take this a step further and really get high definition between the two, because this is sort of like the rust is a little too metallic, as we just kind of showed here. Like, there's a lot of red in this area, and typically we want there to be more of a contrast between the two. So if I close these down and I drag the base color back in, and I'm going to take the metallic map. The reason why I want the metallic map is look at the difference between the specular map here and the metallic map. So the metallic map is very defined between the areas that are not reflective and the ones that are. So I find that this would not always work, but I find that if you really want like something like the rust to stand out, or like just any other color details on the metal, this would work a lot of the time. Just kind of be aware of when you're using it, because it's technically not how the maps are supposed to work. But I find that Lumion doesn't have sort of like it can't differentiate as much as the other programs can, like Blender and 3ds Max, when you're bringing in the specular map. So sometimes the materials will either look too reflective or not reflective enough. But this is kind of a nice way to get around that. So I'm going to drop the metallic in. I'm going to make the alpha channel for this. I'm going to hit Control A, Control C, because I don't want to cut it this time. I typically do it just to make sure it worked, and I did not want that. Delete that channel. I'll drop that here and put that in. So looking at this right away, we can see that there's a much bigger difference. And let me pull this other one in so that we can kind of see turn this on. So if I flip between the two of them, this is the one with the specular map on it, and this is the one with the metallic map on it. Now, what this is basically saying is that these areas here are going to be like the area that almost looks like it's the metal. That's going to be extremely reflective. Whereas these red parts here, there's not going to be any reflection, basically, because it's pure black. So yeah, that is the effect that we want. So I'm going to save this one, and I'm just going to call this one color matte. Okay, so we can close these ones, or actually we'll leave this one open, and then I'll bring in the normal map again. And I will Control A, Control C again. put it in here. Now, this again is a much bigger difference. Like if I open up the normal map to compare it and we turn the alpha on, you can see that this is a very big difference. Like this is like a very dull where like it almost looks like it just kind of like painted over it with the same color. That's why we weren't getting great definition, but this one definitely has that. So we are going to get the effect that we want. Most of the time, I think the metallic would work better in Lumion, as I said, if you kind of are using this effect. But if you're unsure, if it's kind of like how you want it to look, make it the color map with the specular map, but then also with the metallic map, and just compare them to, and then just kind of fine tune them from there just to find the one that you want. So this one, I'll just overwrite this. Or am I going to have to name it something else, I guess? Let's call it norm met. Okay, so let's bring that in now and see if that's going to give us the effect we want. And color met. And also the normal met. Yeah. So as you can see that right off the bat, like you can tell that the rust is really not reflective anymore. And if we go into the render mode, then you can really see the difference here. So before it was like, yeah, you know, the rust is kind of standing out. Now there's no question about it. Like it almost looks like there's almost no reflectivity at all. So maybe this effect is a little bit stronger than you would want. You know, you can kind of dial it back by maybe just going into Photoshop or something like that and just lightening up the darks a little bit. But I think that using the metallic map is a really nice kind of fix to a lot of these problems, especially because, as I said before, like using the reflection map, I find that the reflection map doesn't work as well as other programs kind of use it. But the metallic map is pretty straightforward. It's like in this one, it was just white and black. And I believe that the way that the reflection mask works in Lumion is it's on a scale of 0 to 255, with white and black being on the ends. So if you know, if you have something that's gray, then it'll kind of put it in the middle. It does go on a range. It doesn't have to be like this, but I just find for these kind of effects where you really want people to know that it's rusted, you can do that. And I mean, you know, you can always go in and do the weathering, but as I kind of mentioned in the other tutorial, I find that weathering has kind of it has a pattern to it, and the pattern is not really controllable unless you want to mess around with like kind of the map scale and stuff like that. But even then, you're not really changing the weathering, you're just kind of changing your texture. So I don't completely like doing that. Like if any chance that I can use to you know, maybe I'll just use it a little bit like that, but any chance I can use the texture to kind of give me all the information that I need in Lumion, I think the better. And I went through this in the first part, I believe, but I do use weathering. I just don't really agree with what most artists in Lumion do, where they'll go like, okay, well, I have a metal, so I'm just going to throw weathering on it. Whereas I've seen it, people put it on like fridges inside, where you're not going to have, you know, you're not going to have weathering inside of a house because that doesn't make any sense. But whereas this is like a shipping container in someone's backyard, then this does kind of make sense to put weathering on it. So hopefully through this tutorial you'll kind of learn some more tools so you won't always have to default to kind of doing that, because while it does work, it does take away kind of your control over it. Because, you know, we'll just show this one more time, but if I use the weathering here, the parts that kind of jut out, they aren't getting any effect at all. It's only the crevices, which I don't completely understand how that works, but that is kind of that's sort of where we're at with it. But anyways, that's going to be the end of this tutorial. I really hope that it helped some of you guys out. There's only going to be one more part. That's going to be, in my opinion, the funnest part, because we're going to go into Poliigon and we're actually going to get some models that have metals on them, and I'm going to show you how to bring those in without just getting that black effect that you kind of see with the textures here. It's not as obvious with Poliigon where you're going to get the maps, because you don't have the specular and the metallic workflow kind of like right in there. It's just sort of hidden. So that's what I'm going to get into in the next video. I want to thank you guys for stopping by the channel. It's been a lot of fun this past month making tutorials and kind of getting to know some of you. especially just being active on the Lumion forums. So if this is one of your first times stopping by the channel, I'd love it if you consider hitting that subscribe button and maybe even liking the video. I do plan on releasing at least 4 to 5 videos a week. I have a long list of sort of tips and tricks that I want to show people. So it'd be great if you stuck around for some more videos. So I am going to leave it here for now. If you have any comments about this video, or even just suggestions for future videos that maybe you're struggling with, or you want to see how I do something, please just leave a comment below. I don't really have a set schedule for when I'm going to be making the video, so if you say like you're really struggling with this one topic, I can kind of if I know how to do it myself, then I can sit down and make a video and help you out. Or if I don't know it, I'd be willing to kind of sit down and we can kind of learn and figure it out together so that we can sort of jump that hurdle. And then if I ever run into that problem in the future, I'll know how to get through it. So yeah, we'll leave it there. Have a great night, guys, and I will hopefully see you tomorrow in the next video.